I'm Eugene Perrier. You are here with Breakthrough News at the People's Summit in Los Angeles, and I am here with Philip Agnew of Black Men Build. Phil, good to be with you, man.
Thank you, man. I'm very happy to be here, man.
No, of course. Well, let me just start with that. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things happening at this event, but why was it important for you to be here and to be a part of this?
Claudia told me to come. I'm gonna come. No, I mean, hey, let me be honest with you. I didn't know the scope of the conference. I genuinely knew that if Claudia asked me to come, if I'm going to be on a panel with Dr. Molina and folks talking about democracy, and I looked at the agenda and I'm looking at the thinkers, the people that I want to learn from, the content, I knew I had to be here. Later on, I back-ended, Biden's doing a little something, around the corner. But for me, this was just a moment, and what it's become for me in my life where I'm at right now is a place to really, really re-immerse myself in why I'm doing this. To step outside of the work we're doing in the U.S. or step outside of the work I'm a part of in Miami and see that I've got common cause with people around the world and that we're all fighting this fight together. So that's why it's huge for me. That's why I knew I had to be here.
The whole discourse of the week, I guess, is democracy and what it means. I
Right.
mean, Biden has put in his whole whatever that is, and apparently it's not Cuba and Venezuela that
Right.
we know
At
from
all.
his perspective.
No.
Here it's almost like the polar opposite. I mean, just sitting with that concept, what is democracy to you, and how does that with the folks you are working with day in and day out, how do you feel they're relating to this American concept of democracy?
That's an interesting question. That's the subject of the panel tonight, and I'm really struggling with it. To me, democracy speaks to the highest of human ideals. It is the ability for people to have a say in what their lives look like. But it's also a responsibility. It's a lot of power in being able to decide what your life looks like, but you have a responsibility to other people. You have a responsibility to future people who aren't even here. Some people would say we have a responsibility to our ancestors. You have a responsibility to the planet. And to me, it's something that we've never really had in this country. And because of the U.S., it's something that people around the world never will experience, even though they go and fight wars for democracy everywhere. Democracy to me is such a powerful union of not just desire and what we want, but what we need, right? And people being able to have a say in that, in the labor, what our labor produces, right? What we have a say in what happens with our labor. We have a say in the state of our schools, of our economy. And what they're doing over there, right, is that America has a say in what the world looks like. And we are living in the American imagination here and the world over. And so to be here, to not just be talking about democracy, but be talking about what the future and what the present could look like is really, really important to me. And I'm just here to learn. I'm on this panel, but I'm sitting back with my notebook, right? Because as I said, it's very rare that we experience, especially as Black Americans, it's very rare that we experience the power and the responsibility of true democracy.
Talk a little bit about the work y'all are doing with Black Men Build. I mean, I know you're doing a lot of work all across the country, and it feels to me like, especially when we're talking about what the future is going to look like, that is so, I mean, to me it feels, especially with younger Black men, that I don't want to say we're marginalized from the conversation because we're a part of the conversation, but only in the most sort of demonized
We're a subject.
Yes.
Right.
And like, I feel that at least from the outside looking in, the work that y'all are doing almost feels like people starting to define for themselves, who they are and what their community could be.
Right. Well, I want to say one thing. I'm happy to not be doing a whole bunch of different things now. Black Men Build is most of what I do. We do have chapters all over the country. I'm a proud part of the Miami work that we're doing and, of course, helping to incubate and grow the rest of it. Our goal with Black Men Build, put it simply, is to bring Black men to the left. In times like this, men, not just Black men, but all of us,
right.
Women, no matter your orientation, your gender representation, in times like this, you cling to what you know. And in the U.S., what we know is capitalism, is authoritarianism, is fascism, is patriarchy. And men are no different. In fact, we're at the top of that, right? And Black men are no different than any other group. And so for us, Black Men Build, the goal is to transform Black men so they will transform their communities. It's not Black men just for themselves, Black men just coming together to have a He-Man Women Haters Club and talk about how we need alpha men and we're sick of all that. No, that is in no way. We're fighting against all of those notions. It came from the realization from sisters, one, that on the right, they are recruiting heavily
Yes.
online black men into their circles, into xenophobic circles, into ADOS circles, into anti-women, into anti-black circles, right? And so we wanted to say, no, black men, there are black men in this country currently, past, present, who actually believe that new men must be born, right? That patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy that dominates so much of how we were raised in this country is inhumane, and that their version of masculinity is cowardly, that it destroys relationships with self and other people, and that black men should be at the front edge of building new men, right? And that we have a responsibility to not be numbed out in the democratic process, right? And that's what we see so much. I can't vote. That shit don't mean nothing. Boom, boom, boom. And so we fight back against that narrative. And we're not talking about electoral politics specifically only. We're saying we want black men to be more engaged. And you hit on it when you said the marginalization. I do think black people are seen as objects is what I meant. You know, just people who are part of it, but to take on that agency and say we want to be politicized and we want to participate, I think is a true power. And we just want black men to be a part of the process. We don't think we're being left out by sisters or left behind by sisters. We want to make sure that in the specific ways that black men have to be engaged with, we're in the position to do that and bring them to the left.
Well, I'm glad you talked about the role of the right in this, because it just brings me also to the role of culture and what we're doing. Because obviously, I think the Kanye phenomenon, and when he brought up Candace Owens, and I mean, it kicked open this whole new world.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, Kanye is just the tip of the spear, and is still out there doing this work and bringing in more artists. Like, if you've been canceled, all of a sudden you had a
you're probably and
it's making it a whole piece. But I don't know where I'm going with this, but the role of culture in this whole piece.
Well, culture, let's go. You know, Mal said it. Culture is an incredibly important piece to the arsenal that the U.S. uses, right? And so, culture is the ability to translate values and ideas into people's being. So the music, the family structures, the banking, the language, all of those things support the dominant culture. And so, for us, if you are not doing cultural work, then the change you want to see in the world isn't being fully felt and baptized by the people you're trying to change. And so for me, we've got to be able to stand and say, you know, there's Kanye on that end. He doesn't speak for all black people, right? And we don't know who he's speaking for, on any given day, right? But he doesn't speak for all of us. That's why we have artists, and we put out our publication is called Wartime. We do that every 3 months. The next one is called Money, Power, Respect. We're going to talk about money, power, and respect. For us to be in the center, what you need in life, you know what I'm saying? And that's where we're going, but we're talking about it with the left point of view, right? So for us, the culture is an incredibly important thing. Laws do not change culture. Culture changes laws, right? You can change all the laws and policies you want, but if those deeply held beliefs that white people are dominant, that men, the empire of man is what we need, and that other people from other countries, that stuff is still gonna live within people, and we're gonna replicate it. We were talking a little bit earlier, joking about Liberia. You know, no matter where you go, that poison, that European is still gonna be in your mind. And so we've gotta engage with the culture so that feeling that we want really can translate into not just policy, but transformation.
You know, obviously, one of the big topics everyone's talking about right now is gun violence. I don't know if you saw this dude, Blake Masters, who is this far-right guy running for Senate in Arizona. And he comes out and he gives a speech last week, and he says, we do have a gun violence problem in America, and basically, it's black people. And I wasn't, surprised to hear him say this, but I did think,
shots fired, no pun intended.
And you see so many people say, you know, since Uvalde, we've had X number of mass shootings. Since Buffalo, X number of mass shootings. And, you know, those are usually, unfortunately, tragic situations of community violence. But how do we build a conversation that has some level of, I don't know if empathy is the right word, or understanding around, because obviously what happened in Uvalde, what happened in Buffalo, that's not south side of Chicago, that's not southeast DC, that's not south LA. And I'm still struggling with how we construct that conversation around community violence that doesn't dehumanize so many of our brothers who are not only you know, it's like the people who victimize are the most likely to be victimized.
Yeah.
And how deep that is for people to really even understand.
Well, first I want to say, you know, it's Black Men Bill's official position that every black person should have a firearm. You should know, you should learn about, you should be trained with it. I'm not talking about war games. I'm talking about if you have a firearm, you should be trained with it. You should keep it away from children. But you should make sure that black people, poor people in this country have a familiarity with the tool. And you shouldn't just not have the tool. That's one thing I want to say. I think that's an important thing. But that's not what that's not what the conversation that, you know, you're even presenting is about. We live in a culture, right, of violence. I firmly believe that if guns were never invented, there would be mass stabbings. If knives and sharp objects were never invented in America, we would have mass punchings, right? There would be people who will go up to schools and punch little kids. I'm not trying to be funny, right? What I'm saying is, I really am reluctant to come off like, you know, what some of those guys talk about, you know, oh, it's not the gun that did it, it's the people. But the fact of the matter is, we have people who are growing up in subhuman conditions, right? I'm from Chicago, right? You've taken away all the community centers. You've taken away all the schools, taken away all the summer jobs. You've taken away all the opportunity. We had programs, you know. You've taken away all type of hope. And then you put crack, then you put drugs in, then you take all the leaders from the gangs who had some structure to things and you take them out, and then you flood it with weapons of mass destruction. Then you add on social media and you say, all right, y'all figure it out. You know what I'm saying? It's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
And so for me, I think on the left, we should be able to have a nuanced conversation about what it means to be able to have poor people and black people and women be able to protect themselves in a society that already is armed to the teeth, trained, and be able to protect themselves. And then we also need to talk about the deep sickness of our society, right? And the conditions that you put human beings into. I just want to make one last point. I know you're gonna have to do the editing thing, but the fact of the matter is, what we should talk about really what is violence. And I do believe intracommunal violence is something we need to engage with, not because black people are predestined or Latino people are predestined, but you hurt people who are around you, and if you're hurt, you're gonna hurt who's around you. But a company that takes 5,000 jobs away from a city and completely destroys the economy and takes them somewhere else, right? A person gets on a Zoom and lays off 600 people at one time. What type of violence is that? To close a grocery store in the middle of a community or never put one there in the first place? What type of violence is that? We have mass murders that are going on every single day by people in suits, right? And so we must talk about all mass murder. We must work as a community to engage with conflict resolution, to engage with taking guns away from people who aren't trained, to take away those things that put people in situations where they feel like the only thing they can do is kill one another. We got to do that. And we have to talk about the fact that we didn't put ourselves in this condition, and that there are murderers, blood-hungry murderers who put us in those positions and then pathologize us about those positions later.
I think it's, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I mean, you know, I think that I mean, even just what you were saying about the sort of the leaders in the gangs and what that does to a community. I can't remember who I was having this conversation with, maybe somebody from Cure Violence, but about the like ink blot effect of violence interruption and how places they weren't even working. I said, why is that? And they said, well, people don't think about it like this. But really, the people who are calling the shots are community leaders.
Yeah.
So if they change their mind and say, we're going to go to peace, people are going to go to peace.
Yes.
And if enough of them do it, it becomes a cultural change in a community. But since we just say thugs, you know, and we don't think of people as leaders, and we dehumanize them, we have no ability to reach them and to transform our society. And the direct and deliberate attempt, I don't even know why I'm thinking about this, but Larry Hoover on the Ghetto Boys album. I mean, this is what he's saying on those phone calls with Jay Prince. Like, this is why they want to lock me up. You know, because of they understand the power of our street organizations. Even if they aren't going where we need to go, but the intrinsic power of organization to transform a community.
We talk about bastards of the party, right? We talk about these street level organizations. We have to contextualize a lot of this stuff. A lot of the street organizations started as protection. Many of them moved into economic engines, which then resulted in violence. And, you know, sometimes it was fightings, it was stabbings, and then guns got in the mix. But one thing I do want to talk about, it's a longer nuanced convo of which I'm not the subject matter expert. But we cannot talk about this without talking about crack and what crack did to the minds, the hearts, the souls, the infrastructures of our communities, man. You throw in one of the most addictive, crazy drugs ever, and it ruins neighborhoods, man. The slum and the blight that we see, the destruction of the street organizations, the maniacal nature that we witness, man, this comes from the fact that people were born from living and stewing in conditions generated by a drug that takes your mind almost from the first time you do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think it is a very complex conversation. And when we're talking about street organizations, we're not absolving them or their leaders of the crimes against their own people. But what we are saying is a lot of them didn't start off that way. A lot of them were responding to the current conditions, and many more of them were perverted and destroyed by a drug war that brought the drugs and then said, oh, now we want a war too. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's a lot of those things. And I know you and we could talk for hours about it, but I do think the left, and we could talk about electorally, et cetera, needs to have a better conversation about guns and can have a more complete conversation about guns and why black people feel the need to cling to them and why we need training and we should keep them, and why we also don't need ARs. But also no one's gonna turn in their AR after, you know. So if you know your neighbor got an AR, then he not turning his back in like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna go. You know, so it's complex, especially where we are. We're at a fever pitch where there's more guns than people in this country, and so we got to reckon with that.
How bold do we need to be in just challenging capitalism directly and talking about totally different systems?
Listen, I think we got to stop hiding from it. We're still living under and I live in Miami, where you don't even want to, you don't even want to say socialism at all. Own it. We have to own it. We have to take it back. Right? We've lived under McCarthy for far too long. One thing we say, you cannot spell capitalism without cap. It starts with cap, right? It starts with a lie, right? It starts with a lie, right? And that lie has been supported by factors and culture over and over, but you know it's a lie. You know there's no way this economic system can sustain itself without 400 years of unpaid labor. You give me any other economic system, I can make it work. You give me crackers, I can tell you, look, this is the best economic system we ever thought of. You give me 400 years of unpaid labor, I can make it work. I can make it work, right? And so capitalism, the notion that there is no alternative has been proven untrue over and over and over and over. And so I think we need to be forceful as black people. We need to be forceful in saying there's a long tradition of this. And I think we need to be brilliant enough to say that the socialism that we may study or the socialism that we may study elsewhere in the present or elsewhere in the past may not apply fully to what we're talking about, and we're gonna do a new one. We're the people of innovation. We gave you the 5-day work week when nobody knew what a weekend ever was. We're the party of the future. We're the people of the future. I think we should own that we're bringing a new socialism, a new way of being, and we're the smartest people ever, and we're gonna do it, and it's gonna be hot because that's what we do.
Right on. Well, hey man, I know you got a lot going on here. I appreciate you giving us some time.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate you. Thank you.